Hey everybody, my name is Philip. Earlier this year I decided to read the Bible from front to end, all the way through, and I really just wanted to capture on video a little bit of a journal so that I can share some of that journey with you all. Really the intention for me is to just learn more about the character of God and see what lessons that He might have for me that I can live out in my life. So I hope these videos are beneficial to you in some way, and I hope you enjoy them. Welcome back, everyone. We are in 2 Kings chapter 12 today, and if you remember from the previous chapter, a little boy named Joash has just become the king of Judah. He's 7 years old when he began his reign, which, can we just appreciate that for a second? Because when I was 7 years old, I couldn't even be trusted to not take the Easter or the Halloween candy when no one was looking. So kudos to Joash. Shout out Joash. So as always, we're going to start with a little summary of chapter 12, and then we're going to see what lessons we can pull from this today. So though Joash was young, he had something that most kings lacked. He had a wise and faithful mentor. Jehoiada was the high priest that had sheltered and hid Joash from Queen Athaliah in the previous chapter. She was killing all the heirs in the royal family so that she could maintain control for herself. But Jehoiada, he was the priest. He kept Joash safe until he was declared the king. So in verse 2, it says, "All of his life Joash did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight because Jehoiada the priest instructed him. Yet even so he did not destroy the pagan shrines, and the people still offered sacrifices and burned incense there." So Joash did what was right because of his godly leadership, godly mentorship from Jehoiada. Yet not everything was right in the land. Those high places where those local shrines where people would go and offer sacrifices, that certainly wasn't sanctioned by God, and many of them were still active, as we see here. Now, as Joash grew older, he started to see how damaged the temple of the Lord had become. Years of misuse and neglect had left God's house in disrepair. So the young king, he gives the command to the priests. In verse 4, it says, "Collect all the money brought as a sacred offering to the Lord's temple, whether it is a regular assessment, or a payment of vows, or a voluntary gift. Let the priests take some of that money to pay for whatever repairs are needed at the temple." But time passed and nothing seemed to happen. It says in verse 6, "By the 23rd year of Joash's reign, the priests still had not repaired the temple." 23 years? Are you kidding me? He asks them to do something. They don't do it for 23 years. I would have been like, dude, it's been 20 minutes. Let's get it going. So understandably, Joash, he's frustrated. He summons Jehoiada and the other priests, and he rebukes them. In verse 7, he says, "Why haven't you repaired the temple? Don't use any more money for your own needs. From now on, it must all be spent on the temple repairs." So the priests, they agree. They're like, we'll no longer collect the money ourselves, and a new system will be established. So Jehoiada, he took a chest, he bored a hole in its lid, and placed it beside the altar, an offering bucket, if you will. So when people came to the temple, they put their offerings into the box, similar to a piggy bank. So from here, the funds were used honestly and effectively to pay carpenters, builders, masons, stonecutters. They were used to buy material like timber and stone, and ultimately to restore the temple. So this is a really cool idea and cool thing that Joash was doing, repairing God's temple. But his reign was not marked without peril. King Hazael over in Syria, he marches towards Jerusalem. And instead of fighting, Joash tries to buy peace. He takes all the money from the palace treasuries. He even takes what his forefathers had dedicated specifically to God. We see that in verse 18. It says, "King Joash collected all the sacred objects that Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, the previous kings of Judah, had dedicated, along with what he himself had dedicated. He sent them all to Hazael, along with all the gold in the treasuries of the Lord's temple in the royal palace. So Hazael called off his attack on Jerusalem." Hazael's like, I'm going to come and get you. I'm going to attack you. I am going to end you. And Joash says, "Here's a bunch of money. Please don't do that." And Hazael says, "Okay, I'm not beneath a little bribery." He takes it, he calls off the attack. And then sadly, at the end of this chapter, we see that Joash's story ends in betrayal. In verse 20 it says, Joash's officers plotted against him and assassinated him at Beth Millo on the road to Silla. He was buried in Jerusalem, but not in the tomb of the kings. It was a quiet dishonor for a man who had started strong but stumbled when his spiritual guide had passed. So in this chapter we see Joash basically inherits a broken kingdom and a broken temple. With the wise counsel of Jehoiada, he begins his reign with passion for the Lord. And I think Joash's life teaches us a powerful spiritual truth that a good beginning is not necessarily a guarantee to a faithful end. See, as believers, I believe, you see what I did there? As believers, I believe that we all need spiritual, godly guidance. But we also need our convictions. So Jehoiada was Joash's spiritual anchor, and when Jehoiada died, so did Joash's faithfulness. So the question I have is, who is guiding your walk with God? Or even more than that, is your faith yours or is it borrowed? Godly mentors are important. They're essential even. But we have to develop our own rooted convictions, because eventually the Jehoiadas of our lives won't always be there. And when that happens, will we still walk with God faithfully, or will we fall away? The second thing I saw here was that good stewardship matters. See, Joash was able to restore the temple because he had set up this transparent, this trustworthy system of offerings. He didn't use the money for showy things. It went to the workers who were fixing up the temple, and the workers were faithful. See, the idea here is that our resources are God's resources. How we handle money, it reflects our hearts. Are we building temples or kingdoms, and are we trustworthy with what God gives us? Or do we simply use the resources that we have for our own selfish pleasures? And I'm talking to myself here because this is a challenge for me. The next thing I saw was that compromise can destroy what passion had once built. And what I mean by that is the same king who fought to rebuild this temple was now plundering it out of fear of King Hazael coming in and attacking him. So he buys this pagan king off instead of trusting the Lord. And that's not the same Joash that we met at the beginning of this chapter under the guidance of Jehoiada. If we're honest with ourselves and we're not careful, we can let fear, pressure, and compromise tempt us to sacrifice spiritual priorities for short-term peace. Don't trade the sacred for the safe. Don't tear down what God helped you build. So overall, in this story of Joash, he had a powerful start. He had a godly mentor, a noble goal, a reformed system, but none of that mattered in the end because he lost his way. So here's the question I have for us all today. Are we leaning too much on someone else's faith? Are we managing our resources with integrity? And are we compromising in places that we once stood firm? Because it ain't how you start, it's how you finish. Paul says in 2 Timothy 4:7 that I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. And I think we need to look at our lives that way. We need to look at our relationship and our walk with God that way. That it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And yes, to have a relationship with God, you have to start somewhere, sometime. But stay with it. Stay faithful. Look at it like it's a race, and we want to finish strong. Won't he do it?